The big room at the Galactic Academy was full of students from many different worlds. All kinds of alien creatures sat in their seats, waiting for class to start. The teacher was Professor Zekthara, a tall alien with shiny blue scales that looked like crystals. His 4 eyes looked around the room as he got ready to teach his lesson about different planets and the life forms that lived on them. Jake Morrison sat in the back row, trying not to draw attention to himself. He was 24 years old and had short brown hair and green eyes. Small scars on his hands and a thin line above his left eyebrow showed that he had been in fights before. He had spent 6 years in the Earth military before being chosen to come to this alien school. The other students thought he looked ordinary, maybe even weak compared to some of the bigger aliens in the room. Next to Jake sat Lisa Shun, another human student. She had long black hair and wore simple clothes. She was a scientist who studied ocean life back on Earth. Like Jake, she had been picked to represent humanity at this school. The third human student was Aaron Mitchell, who sat a few rows ahead. He was a doctor who had worked in hospitals treating people who got hurt badly. All three humans were among the first of their kind to attend classes with aliens from across the galaxy. The other students in the room looked very different from humans. Some had tentacles instead of arms. Others had big eyes like deer or insects. A few had scales like fish or skin that changed colors. Many of them were much bigger than humans, and some had natural weapons like claws or sharp teeth. When they looked at the humans, it was often with curiosity or pity, like they were looking at small, helpless creatures. Professor Zekthara started his lesson by turning on a machine that made pictures appear in the air above the students' heads. The first picture showed a map of the galaxy with different colored dots marking where intelligent life had been found. Today we will learn about the newest members of our galactic community, the professor said. His voice came through a small device that changed his alien words into language everyone could understand. The humans of Earth have recently joined. It's after developing space travel. Their planet is what we call a Class C world, which means it is relatively safe and peaceful. Some of the alien students made sounds that seemed like laughter. A few whispered to each other, and Jake could tell they were not taking humans seriously. One student, who looked like a giant bug, clicked his mouth parts together in what Jake had learned was how his species laughed. The professor continued talking while new pictures appeared in the air. These showed Earth from space, then views of human cities, forests, and oceans. As you can see, Earth is a very tame world compared to true death worlds. The humans evolved on a planet with few serious threats, which explains why they seem so fragile compared to species from more dangerous environments. Jake felt his jaw tighten when he heard this, but he stayed quiet. He had been listening to comments like this for months since arriving at the academy. Most of the alien students and even some teachers seemed to think humans were weak because they needed tools and machines to survive. They did not understand that needing tools made humans smart, not weak. The largest land predators on Earth are creatures called tigers and lions, Professor Zekthara explained as pictures of these animals appeared. As you can see, they are quite small and only dangerous to individual humans. Most human civilizations learn to avoid these creatures or drive them away with simple tools. A student who looked like he was made of living rock raised what might have been a hand. Professor, what about their ocean predators? Surely any planet with large bodies of water must have some dangerous sea life. An excellent question, the professor replied. Earth's oceans are actually quite peaceful. They contain mostly harmless creatures like whales, which are large but gentle filter feeders. The humans have no significant marine predators to worry about. Jake and Lisa looked at each other across the room. Lisa rolled her eyes and shook her head slightly. Jake could see that she was thinking the same thing he was. These aliens had no idea what they were talking about when it came to Earth's oceans. The professor kept talking, showing more pictures of Earth's animals. The humans are interesting because they represent what happens when intelligence develops on a world without strong evolutionary pressure. They had to become clever to survive, but they never developed the physical strength or natural weapons that species from harsher worlds possess. A student who looked like a giant jellyfish with tentacles spoke up. Professor, how did such a weak species develop space travel? It seems unlikely that they could overcome their physical limitations. Another good question, Professor Zekthara answered. This is actually a perfect example of how intelligence can sometimes make up for physical weakness. The humans compensated for their frail bodies by developing increasingly sophisticated tools and technologies. They essentially built their way off their planet rather than evolving their way off it. More pictures appeared showing human technology, spaceships, and cities. The professor pointed out different things about human civilization, always with the tone of someone explaining how a small, weak animal had managed to do something surprising. Their military history is particularly interesting, the professor continued. Human wars were fought primarily with tools and machines because the humans themselves were too weak to fight effectively without technological assistance they required. Vehicles to move quickly, weapons to hunt successfully, and complex strategies to overcome their natural disadvantages. Jake had heard enough. He could feel anger building in his chest, but it was cold and controlled anger, the kind he had learned to use in the military. He looked around the room at all the alien students who were listening to this lecture and believing that humans were somehow inferior or lucky to have made it to space. The professor was still talking about human weaknesses when Jake finally decided he had listened to enough wrong information. He stood up slowly, his full height unfolding as he rose from his seat. The movement caught the attention of several nearby students, and soon everyone in the room was looking at him. Professor, Jake said, his voice calm but carrying the kind of authority that made people listen. I think you might have missed something important in your research about Earth's predators. The professor's crystal-like scales changed from blue to a yellowish color that Jake had learned meant curiosity mixed with annoyance. Oh, please, human Jake, share your knowledge with the class. Jake started walking down the steps toward the front of the classroom. His military boots made clear, steady sounds on the metal floor. Every step echoed in the suddenly quiet room. He had spent months listening to aliens talk about how weak and helpless humans were, and today something inside him had finally had enough. You mentioned that Earth's oceans contain mostly harmless filter feeders, Jake said as he reached the bottom of the room, but you forgot to mention sharks. The word hung in the air like a challenge. Several students shifted uncomfortably in their seats, though they did not understand why. There was something in the way the human said that word that made them nervous. Sharks? Professor Zekthar repeated, his scales now shifting to a more orange color. I do not recall that designation in our files about Earth's marine life. Jake smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. It was the kind of smile that predators gave just before they showed their teeth. That's because whoever put together those files did not understand what they were looking at. They saw fish swimming in the ocean and assumed they were harmless. They made the same mistake you are all making about humans. The room fell completely silent. Every alien student was now staring at Jake with growing attention and concern. Something in his voice and manner had changed, and they could sense that they were about to learn something they would not like. Would you like me to show you what a shark really is? Jake asked, his hand moving toward the controls for the holographic display. Jake walked to the front of the classroom and placed his hand on the control panel for the holographic display. Professor Zekthara stepped back, his crystal scales now glowing a worried amber color. The alien teacher had taught many different species over the years, and he recognized the look of a predator about to show its true nature. Computer, show Earth ocean predator, great white shark, Jake said clearly. The hologram machine hummed for a moment, then created a massive shape in the center of the room. 20 feet of pure killing machine appeared above the students' heads. The great white shark hung in the air, its black eyes seeming to stare directly at each alien in the room. Its mouth was slightly open, showing rows of triangular teeth that looked like they could cut through metal. A wave of shocked sounds went through the classroom. The students who looked like deer pressed themselves back into their chairs, their big eyes getting even wider. The bug-like aliens made clicking noises that sounded worried. Even the rock creature student seemed to lean away from the hologram. This, Jake said in a voice like a military instructor teaching new soldiers, is what we call a great white shark. They have been hunting in Earth's oceans for over 400 million years. They are older than trees, older than most of the land. We walk on, older than anything you can imagine. He pointed at the hologram as it slowly turned, showing the creature's enormous jaw. Those teeth are not just for show. Each one is sharp as a razor and cut like a saw. They have about 300 teeth in their mouth at any time. When one tooth breaks or falls out, another one moves forward to replace it. In their lifetime, they will go through about 35,000 teeth. A student who looked like a jellyfish with tentacles raised one of his arms nervously. But surely these creatures live in the deep ocean, far from where humans would encounter them. Jake's smile became even less friendly. No, they hunt in shallow water. They come right up to beaches where humans swim for fun, and they are not the only ones. The hologram changed to show a hammerhead shark with its strange flat head and eyes on the sides. Then it showed a tiger shark with dark stripes, then a bull shark that looked thick and muscular. Hammerhead sharks hunt in groups, Jake explained. They work together like a military unit to corner their prey. Tiger sharks will eat anything they can fit in their mouths. They have found car parts, pieces of boats, and human belongings in their stomachs. Bull sharks are the most dangerous because they can swim in both saltwater and freshwater. They have been found thousands of miles inland in rivers. Lisa Chun stood up from her seat, understanding what Jake was trying to do. Should I tell them about the extinct ones? Yes, please do, Jake nodded. Lisa walked down to join Jake at the front of the room. Computer, show Megalodon shark. The hologram grew even larger, becoming a monster that filled most of the space above the students. 60 feet of ancient predator hung over their heads, its mouth open wide enough to swallow a small spaceship. The teeth were the size of dinner. Plates, Megalodon, Lisa announced. They went extinct millions of years ago, but they ruled Earth's oceans for 15 million years. They were so good at being predators that they only died out because they ate everything else and ran out of food. Each tooth was bigger than a human hand. Professor Zekthara's scales had turned a deep purple color that meant he was very upset. But these are ocean predators. Surely humans stayed out of the water to avoid them? No, Jake said simply. We did not avoid them. We learned to hunt them. The words hit the alien students like a physical blow. Around the room, creatures who had been making jokes about human weakness suddenly stopped laughing. They stared at Jake with new attention and growing worry. Computer, show humans hunting sharks, Jake commanded. The hologram showed pictures of humans on boats, fighting huge sharks with fishing rods. It showed commercial fishing boats bringing in massive sharks. Then it showed something that made several alien students make scared noises. Humans in metal cages, diving underwater to swim next to great white sharks. We hunt them for sport, Jake continued. We study them for science. We swim with them for fun. And the really crazy humans dive down and grab them with bare hands. A bug-like student clicked his mouth parts nervously. But you said they are ancient apex predators? How do humans survive when they meet these creatures? Jake's face became serious. Most of the time, we do not survive. Sharks kill humans every year. But here is what your research files missed. We do not care. We go in the water anyway. We surf in areas where great whites hunt. We dive in waters where bull sharks patrol. We do it because the ocean belongs to us too, and we refuse to let fear keep us away. He turned to face the whole class. You have been looking at humans like we are some kind of peaceful, weak species that got lucky with technology. But you are missing the point. We did not get lucky. We survived on a world where the oceans are full of living missiles with teeth, where every beach could hide a predator that has been perfecting the art of killing for hundreds of millions of years. Lisa stepped forward, and that is just the ocean predators. We have not even talked about the land animals, the diseases, the weather, or the fact that our planet tries to kill us in thousands of different ways every single day. Every human, Child grows up learning about monsters, Jake continued. We tell them bedtime stories about creatures that hunt in the dark. We teach them to be afraid of deep water, dark forests, and strangers. But then we also teach them to face those fears and survive anyway. The lecture hall was completely quiet now. Even Professor Zekthara seemed to be thinking about everything he thought he knew about human evolution and survival. So when you look at us and think we are weak, Jake said, his voice carrying the weight of millions of years of human survival, remember that we are the species that looked at apex predators older than continents and decided to go swimming anyway. We are the species that turned the ocean's most perfect killers into subjects for our nature documentaries and tourist attractions. He paused, letting that information sink into their minds. And if you still think we are weak, ask yourself this question. What kind of species looks at a 20-foot carnivore that has been perfecting murder for 400 million years and decides to grab it by the tail just to see what happens? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Suddenly, every alien in the room was looking at the three humans with completely different eyes. They were not looking at weak, helpless creatures anymore. They were looking at something much more dangerous than they had realized. Jake watched as understanding began to dawn on their faces. These aliens were starting to realize that they had seriously underestimated what humans were capable of. They were beginning to understand that Earth was not the peaceful, safe world they had been told about. Computer, show more Earth-ocean predators, Jake said quietly. The hologram began cycling through images of other dangerous sea creatures, electric eels, poisonous jellyfish, octopi with deadly bites, stingrays with barbed tails, sea snakes with venom that could kill in minutes. The sharks, Jake said as the images continued, are just the beginning. The silence in the lecture hall lasted for several long minutes. Professor Zekthara's crystal scales had shifted through many different colors, before settling on a deep blue that meant he was thinking very hard about what he had just learned. He moved closer to the holographic display, studying the images of sharks with new understanding. Human Jake, he said carefully, you speak of these ocean creatures as if they were just one example among many. Are you saying that your world has other predators that are equally dangerous? Jake looked at Lisa and Aaron, who both nodded at him. Professor, sharks are just the beginning. We have not even started talking about the land predators, the tiny killers you cannot see, or the things that hunt from the sky. Computer, show brown bear, Jake said. The hologram changed to show a massive bear standing on its back legs. The creature was 12 feet tall and looked like it weighed as much as a small car. Several students actually moved backward in their seats when they saw it. Grizzly bear, Jake announced. They can run 40 miles per hour, which is faster than most vehicles on some worlds. They can climb trees better than many primates. Their bite is strong enough to crush a steel ball. Their claws are 4 inches long and sharp enough to cut through metal sheets. They are territorial, which means they will attack anything that enters their space. And they hunt humans in some areas of our planet, he pointed at the hologram. Here is what your research files probably did not mention. Humans choose to live in the same areas as these creatures. We hike through their territories for entertainment. We camp in their hunting grounds for vacation. Some humans move to bear country specifically because they want to be closer to dangerous wildlife. A student from a low-gravity world spoke up in a voice that sounded like wind blowing through trees. But surely you have weapons to protect yourselves from these creatures. Sometimes, Lisa said, walking forward. But most of the time we just use our brains and our knowledge of how they behave. Park workers, animal scientists, and outdoor enthusiasts learn to live alongside these predators. They carry pepper spray, make noise while walking, and store their food properly to avoid attracting bears. But bears still kill humans every year, Jake added matter-of-factly. People die, but we do not abandon the wilderness. We study the bears, we learn from them, and we accept the risk because we refuse to be driven away from our own planet by fear. Computer, show African elephant. Jake continued. The hologram displayed a huge elephant with its ears spread wide and its tusks pointing forward like spears. Elephants, Jake said. Most people think they are gentle plant eaters. Wrong. African elephants kill more humans every year than most predators do. They weigh 12,000 pounds, can run 25 miles per hour, and they remember individual humans who have hurt them for decades. They hold grudges and will seek revenge. He turned to face the class. And humans still work with them. We have made their smaller cousins into work animals. We study wild elephants even though they could step on us like insects. We risk our lives to protect them from people who want to kill them for their tusks. The bug-like student clicked his mouth parts together. This seems very stupid. Why would you willingly put yourselves in such danger? Because that is what humans do, Jake said simply. We do not just survive on our world. We master it. We have turned living alongside apex predators into an art form. Lisa stepped up to the controls. Computer, show human wildlife researchers. The hologram showed a series of pictures that made the alien students gasp. A human swimming with great white sharks without any protection, another human living among huge gorillas, a third human studying wolves in the wild, a fourth human holding poisonous snakes with his bare hands. Jane Goodall lived with dangerous chimpanzees for decades, Lisa explained. Steve Irwin made a career out of handling the most dangerous animals on Earth. Dian Fossey died protecting mountain gorillas from poachers. These are not unusual people. In human society, they are considered heroes. We have entire industries built around people who risk their lives to study and protect dangerous animals, Jake added. Wildlife photographers, ocean scientists, park rangers, zoo workers, animal trainers. Millions of humans make their living by getting close to creatures that could kill them without effort. Professor Zekdara S. Scales had shifted to a pattern that none of the students had ever seen before. Colors kept changing from deep purple to bright orange. But surely these are specially trained experts with advanced equipment and support teams? Computer, show human recreational activities, Jake said with a smile that was becoming more frightening to his alien audience. The hologram showed humans surfing in shark-filled waters, diving with dangerous sea creatures, climbing mountains without safety ropes, and jumping off cliffs with only small parachutes. We do it for fun, Jake said. Extreme sports are a billion-dollar business on Earth. Humans pay money to put themselves in deadly situations. We call it adventure tourism. A new voice spoke from the back of the room. It was Aaron Mitchell, the human doctor. Should we tell them about the microscopic predators? The alien students shifted nervously in their seats. The predators they had seen so far were at least big enough to see coming. Oh yes, Jake nodded. Computer, show human diseases. The hologram showed various viruses, bacteria, and parasites, all made large enough to see clearly. These are what actually kill most humans, Aaron said, his medical training clear in his voice. Malaria, tuberculosis, HIV, influenza, cholera, plague. Our planet is crawling with tiny predators that have been evolving to kill us for millions of years. They live in our water, our air, our food, even inside our own bodies. And we fight them, Jake added. We have completely eliminated smallpox from our planet. We have almost wiped out polio. We have turned diseases that killed millions into minor problems that children get vaccinated against. We wage war against enemies so small we cannot see them without special equipment. Lisa stepped forward again. But here is what really shows you what humans are made of. We have taken all these deadly predators, these ancient killers, these invisible enemies, and we have learned to use them as tools. Computer, show medical applications of predators. The hologram showed shark parts being used in medical research, bear products in traditional medicine, snake poison being used to make medicines, and tiny bacteria being changed to produce life-saving drugs. We do not just survive our predators. Lisa said, we turn them into weapons against disease and death. We study shark skin to make better swimsuits. We use bee poison to treat joint pain. We have turned our deadliest enemies into our most valuable allies. The lecture hall was completely silent now. The alien students were staring at the three humans with expressions that mixed awe, horror, and something that looked like fear. Jake looked around the room and saw that understanding was finally starting to show on their faces. So when you look At humans and think we are weak, he said, his voice carrying the weight of billions of years of evolution and survival. Remember that we are the species that looked at a planet full of things trying to kill us and decided to stay anyway. We are the species that turned survival into an art form and danger into entertainment. He paused, letting the full meaning sink into their minds. And if you still think Earth is a gentle world that produced a soft species, he said with a smile, that showed all his teeth, wait until you hear about what we do to each other. The temperature in the lecture hall seemed to drop as Jake's last words hung in the air like a threat. Professor Zekthara's crystal scales had turned a deep red color that meant extreme alarm in his species. The alien teacher had studied many different civilizations, but he had never heard a species talk about itself the way these humans were doing. What do you mean by what you do to each other? The professor asked slowly, his voice showing that he was not sure he wanted to know. The answer, Jake looked at Lisa and Aaron, and both of them nodded with grim expressions on their faces. They had reached the part of the conversation that every human dreaded having with other species. It was the part where they had to explain that humans were not just survivors of a dangerous world, but also the most dangerous thing on that world. Computer, show human wars, Jake said quietly. The hologram began showing pictures that made the alien students recoil in their seats. Ancient battlefields covered with bodies, medieval cities under attack, modern explosions that could level entire blocks, soldiers fighting with weapons that could kill from miles away. The scale and violence were immediately obvious to everyone watching. Humans, Aaron said, his medical background making him the best qualified to talk about the damage, are the only species we know of that fights organized wars against itself on a massive scale. We have been fighting planned battles and conflicts for thousands of years. A student from a peaceful species that had evolved past physical conflict millions of years ago spoke up in a voice like leaves rustling in wind. But surely these are old behaviors from your primitive past? Ancient actions that you have grown beyond? No, Jake said simply. We are fighting wars right now. At this very moment, humans are fighting other humans in dozens of conflicts across our planet. We have never had a time in our recorded history when humans were not fighting other humans somewhere. The alien students looked at each other with growing horror. The idea of a species that constantly made war against itself was almost impossible for most galactic civilizations to understand. Most species either lived in peace or had destroyed themselves long before reaching space travel. Computer, show human weapons. Lisa said. The hologram displayed the evolution of human weapons, stone axes that became metal swords, simple spears that became guided missiles, individual guns that became weapons that could destroy entire cities. The progression showed a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing. We have created tools designed specifically to kill other humans, she explained. We have turned war into an industry. We have built weapons that can destroy whole cities, end civilizations, make planets uninhabitable for thousands of years. And we have used them, Jake added. We are the only species that has ever used nuclear weapons in war. We dropped them on our own cities, killing hundreds of thousands of our own people in seconds. A jellyfish-like student raised a tentacle with obvious distress. But why? What could possibly make a species fight so viciously against itself? Aaron stepped forward. Territory, resources, beliefs, religion, politics, money, ethnic differences, old grudges. We have found reasons to fight wars over everything from access to clean water to abstract ideas about how society should work. Computer, show human military numbers, Jake commanded. The hologram showed statistics that made the alien students pull back in fear. Casualty numbers from major wars. Money spent on weapons, the number of active soldiers across human nations, the size of weapons stockpiles. We spend more money on weapons and warfare than most species spend on their entire civilizations, Jake said. We keep standing armies with millions of soldiers. We have built military industries that employ tens of millions of humans whose only job is to make war more efficient. But here is what makes it truly terrifying, Lisa said, her voice taking on the tone of someone explaining a natural disaster. We have become incredibly good at killing each other. The hologram changed to show modern military technology, invisible aircraft, missiles that could hit targets thousands of miles away, electronic weapons that could destroy communications, swarms of robotic fighters, weapons that could attack through computer networks. We can kill enemies from thousands of miles away without ever seeing them, she continued. We can destroy a country's infrastructure without ever setting foot in it. We can fight wars in space and cyberspace in dimensions that most species have never even thought about. A student from a species that lived and worked together like a hive mind spoke up with clear distress. But surely this constant warfare has made you weaker as a species. Surely you have been held back by all this internal fighting? Jake's laugh was bitter and cold. The opposite happened. War has been our greatest teacher. Almost every major human technology came from military research. Computers, global communications, positioning systems, nuclear power, jet engines, medical advances, space travel, all of it came from humans trying to kill other humans more efficiently. We have turned warfare into a science, Aaron added. We study it in universities. We have written thousands of books about strategy and tactics. We have created entire academic fields around the art of human conflict. Computer, show human military leaders. Jake said the hologram showed historical figures who had shaped human civilization through their skill at warfare, ancient generals, famous commanders, strategic thinkers whose ideas were still studied thousands of years later. These are some of our greatest heroes, Jake explained. We build monuments to military leaders. We name our streets after generals. We celebrate the people who were most skilled at killing other humans. The lecture hall was filled with sounds of distress from different species, clicking mandibles, rustling scales, harmonic vibrations, worried chirping. But here is the paradox, Lisa said, her voice becoming softer. The same species that fights constant wars against itself also produces people who dedicate their lives to saving others. Computer, show human aid workers, she commanded. The hologram showed field hospitals in war zones, disaster relief efforts, peacekeeping missions, medical organizations, refugee camps where humans risked their lives to help other humans who were suffering. We have an entire international system dedicated to preventing and reducing human conflict, Aaron explained. Medical aid groups, disaster relief organizations, peacekeeping forces, thousands of humanitarian groups. Humans die every day trying to help other humans. We have created laws about how to fight wars, Jake added. Rules about how to kill each other in acceptable ways. We have agreed that even in warfare, there are lines that should not be crossed. We prosecute our own soldiers when they break these rules. And after every major war, Lisa said, we promise it was the last one. We build memorials to remember the dead. We swear to never let it happen again. And then we fight another war. Anyway, Professor Zekthara's scales had changed to a pattern that showed complete confusion. I do not understand. You are both the most violent and most compassionate species we have encountered. How is this possible? Jake looked around the room at the faces of his alien classmates, seeing fear, confusion, and something approaching understanding. Because that is what makes us human, he said simply. We are walking contradictions. We can show incredible cruelty and impossible kindness, sometimes in the same person, sometimes in the same day. We are the species that invented both the atomic bomb and vaccines that saved millions of lives, Aaron added. We can destroy cities and save lives with equal skill. We are predators who form emotional bonds with our prey, Lisa said. We are territorial animals who have learned to live in cities with millions of other humans. We are violent creatures who create art and music and literature that can move us to tears. Jake stepped closer to the holographic display, which now showed a rotating image of Earth itself. Every human child grows up learning about monsters, he said, his voice carrying the weight of his species' entire violent history. But we do not just learn about the monsters in the dark, or the monsters in the deep ocean, or the tiny monsters we cannot see. He paused, looking directly at his alien classmates. We learn about the monsters that look exactly like us. The lecture hall remained completely silent for several long minutes after Jake's words about monsters that look like humans. The weight of understanding was settling over the alien students like a heavy blanket. Professor Zekdara's crystal scales had gone through so many color changes that they finally settled on a deep blue-green that meant he was thinking harder than he had ever thought before. "Human Jake," the professor said finally, his voice carrying a respect that had not been there when class started, "you have shown us information that challenges everything we believed we knew about your species." Jake nodded, but his face remained serious. "Professor, we have barely started to scratch the surface. We have not talked about natural disasters, extreme weather, or the fact that our planet regularly tries to kill us through earthquakes, hurricanes, volcanoes, and floods. We have not mentioned that humans regularly choose to live in places that should be completely uninhabitable," Lisa added. "Deserts where the heat can kill you in hours, frozen lands where exposure means death, mountain ranges where the air is too thin to breathe properly," Aaron stepped forward. "Or that we have learned to survive in environments that would instantly kill most life forms. We have been to the deepest parts of our oceans where the pressure would crush most creatures, the highest peaks where there is almost no oxygen, the most radioactive areas on our planet where the very ground glows with death. And we do it because we are curious," Jake said. "We are the species that sees something that might kill us and asks, 'I wonder what is over there?' We are explorers by nature, even when exploration means almost certain death. A student from a peaceful species that had achieved harmony through meditation spoke up in a voice like distant thunder. But surely this constant exposure to danger and death has created a species of monsters?" Jake's expression became gentler. "That is the thing you need to understand. All of this, everything we have told you about sharks and bears and wars and weapons, it has created a species that values life more than almost anything else in the universe. Computer, show human rescue operations," he commanded. The hologram showed images of humans risking their own lives to save others, firefighters running into burning buildings, Coast Guard workers diving into stormy seas, mountain rescue teams climbing impossible cliffs, disaster relief workers helping people after earthquakes and floods. "We have built an entire culture around the idea that human life is precious," Lisa explained. "We train people whose only job is to save other humans. We spend billions on medical research, disaster preparedness, safety equipment, emergency services. Every human child learns basic first aid," Aaron added. "We teach them to help others before helping themselves. We tell them that the greatest thing they can do with their life is save another person's life. And we have created technologies designed specifically to protect and extend human life," Jake continued. "Vaccines that prevent diseases, medical devices that fix broken bodies, safety systems that prevent accidents, warning networks that tell people about coming disasters, emergency protocols that save lives during crises." The hologram changed to show human hospitals, research laboratories, emergency response systems, and safety innovations that had saved millions of lives. "We are the species that looked at a world full of things trying to kill us and decided that death was unacceptable," Lisa said. "We have doubled our average lifespan in just 100 years. We have eliminated diseases that killed millions. We have created a global civilization dedicated to keeping humans alive as long as possible." Professor Zekthara's scales shifted to a lighter blue color. "But what about the warfare? The violence against your own kind that you described?" "That is part of it too," Jake said. "Every war has taught us more about treating injuries, moving supplies, building things, communicating across distances. We have learned to save lives by learning to take them. Our military doctors are among the best trauma surgeons in the galaxy. And, we have been getting better at avoiding wars," Aaron added. "We have created international laws, diplomatic processes, economic reasons for peace. We have learned that working together gets better results than fighting. But we have not eliminated our ability to be violent," Lisa said. "We have just learned to use it more wisely. We use it to protect the things we love." Jake walked over to the holographic display, which now showed a simple image of Earth from space, blue and green and beautiful. Every human knows that they live on a planet that is trying to kill them, he said. We know that our own species can be dangerous. We know that the universe is vast and uncaring and full of things that want to hurt us. He turned to face the class, and we chose to leave our planet anyway. We looked at the infinite darkness of space and said, let us see what is out there. We built ships and launched ourselves into the void because we were curious about what we might find. That is what makes humans truly dangerous, Aaron said. Not our weapons or our wars or our predators. It is our curiosity, it is our refusal to accept that anything is impossible. We are the species that looked at the speed of light and said, that is just a suggestion, Lisa added. We are the species that decided that dying of old age was a problem that needed to be solved. Jake nodded. We are the species that took everything that tried to kill us and turned it into a reason to become stronger. We are not just survivors. We are the products of 4.5 billion years of evolution that rewarded creativity, cooperation, and the absolute refusal to give up. He looked around the room at his alien classmates, seeing complete understanding finally appearing in their eyes. So when you look at humans and wonder what we are capable of, he said, his voice carrying the weight of his species' entire history, remember that we are the species that turned a death world into a garden. We are the species that looked at apex predators and made some of them into pets. We are the species that took the most hostile environment in our solar system and called it home. And now we are here, Lisa said. We are in your classrooms, learning about your cultures, trying to understand your ways of life. We are not here to conquer or destroy. We are here because we are curious about you. But, Aaron added quietly, we are also here because we have learned that the universe is a dangerous place, and the only way to survive in it is to be more dangerous than everything else that lives in it. Jake stepped back from the holographic display, and for a moment, the three humans stood together in front of their alien classmates. They were representatives of a species that had learned to thrive in conditions that would destroy most life forms. We are not weak, Jake said simply. We are not helpless. We are not lucky, we are humans. We are the species that looked at a universe full of monsters and decided to become something that even monsters would fear. He paused, letting that truth sink deep into their minds. We are the species that turned love into a weapon, curiosity into a tool, and survival into an art form. We are the species that refuses to be intimidated by anything, including death itself. The lecture hall was filled only with the sound of different species trying to process what they had learned. Finally, Professor Zekdara's scales shifted to a pattern that showed deep respect and perhaps a small amount of fear. I believe, he said slowly, that we need to completely change our assessment of human civilization. It appears that we have seriously underestimated your species' capabilities and background. Jake smiled, but it was a gentle expression now, not the dangerous grin from earlier. Professor, he said, you have not underestimated us. You have just been looking at us through the lens of your own peaceful experience. But now you know the truth. And what truth is that? The professor asked. Jake looked around the room one final time at the faces of students who would never again think of humans as weak or helpless. We are not the galaxy's charity case, he said. We are not the species that got lucky. We are the species that survived everything our world could throw at us and then decided to see what the rest of the universe had to offer. And now that we are here, Lisa added, we are going to learn everything we can about you, help you however we can, and explore everything we can find. But, Aaron concluded, we are also going to remember where we came from. We are going to remember that. We are the species that made sharks afraid of us. And in that moment, every alien in the room understood that humanity's arrival in the galactic community was not just a new chapter in the story of civilization. It was the beginning of something completely new. The age of the Deathworlders had begun.